All right, I want to welcome
Excuse me.
everybody back to another discussion with Francisco Miranda, of course, from Miranda Orchids. So last week we discussed Cattleya denticulatum and how some of its habitat and how Francisco was part of the team that discovered it originally. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Cattleya nobilior and its habitat and where it is, what it's like, and well, again, here's Francisco. I guess we don't need to do a long introduction this time, but I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Okay,
And
so I'm going to jump directly to the subject so
yeah,
we can have a little bit more time to discuss it.
yeah,
Let me see. What I did this time, I got my presentation on Cattleya nobilior and walkeriana. Okay, can you see that?
yes,
Okay, so let's go back to a different version of the Brazilian map. And because this is the part of a presentation I did on Kampen-Lewis and walkeriana, I have the geographic distribution of both of the species here. On the hottest pink, you have Cattleya walkeriana, which is more of a continuous distribution. But in the lighter color, we have Cattleya nobilior. As you can see here, we have two main distribution areas for Cattleya nobilior. On the western side, we have what we call the typical nobiliors. They go more to the west of the country and into the Pantanal and all the way to Bolivia and maybe a little bit to Paraguay too. Okay. And on more to the east and to the northeast here, we have another distribution range, and this is the distribution of Cattleya nobilior amaliae. And this is actually what you're going to see today, because I spent a lot of time throughout the years getting to the habitats of amaliae. And I don't have much of experience on the habitat around the Pantanal. But essentially, for the purposes of the habitat, they are fairly similar. The difference is that the habitat of the amaliae is even drier than the habitat in the Pantanal. The dry season is longer. Okay. So we're not going to see walkerianas, I'm not going to see the typical. We're just going to concentrate our discussion in the nobilior amaliae habitat. So
and
for it to go to,
Francisco,
yes.
that's such a disjunct population. Is there any? Obviously, the tipo nobiliors and the amaliae variety look pretty different, almost
Yeah, there is a big
different.
separation here because you see, they are separated by the central Brazilian highlands,
Yeah.
where we have the city of Brasilia, which is the country's capital. Okay, so they grow in lower elevation. I think Brazil is about the 3,000 feet elevation, something like this. And the habitats of the nobiliors, at least the amaliae, we're talking about 1,500 to 2,000 feet elevation,
Okay.
which is fairly high. But if you consider how dry it is and how hot it is, it doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah.
Elevation there, unless it's 10,000 feet, which you don't have in Brazil, really. So, okay, so for you to go to this habitat, what you're going to have to do next year or whenever we go, we have to fly to Brasilia, rent a car in there, rent a vehicle, and drive at least 4 or 5 hours for us to get to the beginning of the habitat of the nobiliors. So that's why a trip to the place there is usually minimum 5 days, because they need 1 day to get to Brasilia, 1 day to get to the habitat. At least 3 days in the habitat. Makes no sense for you to stay less than that, because it's long distance. There's a lot of driving.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 1 day back to get back to Brazil, and 1 day to get back to Rio or São Paulo, wherever you're going. So at least 1 week, this is a minimum time for a trip like that. But anyway, we go to get to Brasilia, then I drive all the way to the tablelands here, and then I drop to the valley. Most of the rivers in this region of Brazil, they dry out completely throughout the year, except for the two main rivers, which are the Araguaia and the Tocantins. They make two separate valleys here. Okay, the Araguaia here and the Tocantins here. They join together here. So essentially, the nobilior amaliae are inhabited the valley of the Tocantins River. But you see, for example, plants like Cattleya araguaiensis. Now you know the name because it comes from the Araguaia River.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that people have to associate. And many of the locality names relates to the place where the plants come from, which make things easier for us to understand or plot them on a map.
Mhm.
Anyway, so let's go back to the next one. Okay, this is essentially the Tocantins River Valley. As you can see, it is very dry, and everything mostly look like dead.
Looks like
Because
Texas right now.
we took these pictures at the end of the dry season. So you might ask, why you go there at the end of the dry season? Well, we're going to the end of the dry season because that's when the orchids flower.
Yeah.
Makes no sense going there during the rainy season, which is very wet. Everything looks green, but there are no orchids in bloom. You cannot even see them from the ground because the trees get full of leaves, and it's very difficult to see the plants.
Yeah.
But you notice all these depressions here. You see, these are actually riverbeds from the temporary streams that run in the rainy season. So when you go in the rainy season, there's a lot of little streams grow, like flowing everywhere here. But they last for a few months only. And then by, let's say, February, which is the end of the summer in Brazil, everything starts getting dry, the rain stops, and you get to the fall and winter and spring, everything is very dry. You know, look at the mosses on the ground. Everything is like dead. When it starts getting into rains, it turns green in a couple of weeks. Everything is green.
Yeah.
But then again, we already passed the blooming season of the nobilior, so it doesn't make sense. So you go to the end of the dry season, and the thing is that you see the mountains on the Table Mountains on they actually are on both sides of the valley. But the interesting thing is that the humidity is so low. When you get to the end of the dry season there, sometimes humidity gets down to 5-6% in the air, which means that you can drink a gallon of water, you don't even sweat. The water evaporates from your skin and just get deposits of salt. So it gets really dry, so you really have to be careful with drinking. I mean, you cannot take very little amount of water, take plenty of water and electrolytes.
Francisco, I remember you saying some years ago, your trip to the habitat, you can have butterflies trying to drink the water out of your eyes.
That's true. Butterflies and little like fungus gnats, they see the reflection of the water in your eyes, you know, so they try to get your eyes. So you can minimally use sunglasses or mosquito nets, whatever. If it gets too bad.
Wow.
But yes, because there's no water at all there. Any bugs that are alive there are dying for water. So anything that they say can reflect, it looks like water, they go to it, go for it. But anyway, this just gives an idea. You still can see the plants here. Now, this is a very nice area because it gives an idea of the vastness of the region. And around this little mountain range here, in this little mountain here, mountain range, the mountain range is down there. But the little mountain here, this is a place to find lots of nobiliors and Oncidium, Macropetalum, Fuscopetalum on the trees. So this is a place that you definitely need to stop to look for the plants all around here. Not so much on the roadside, but you just walk like a few hundred yards and you start seeing plants. Like so. You see the limits of the valley here, and you see the way the nobiliars grow.
Oh yeah.
And you see how dry it is.
I mean, the similarities between that area and what it looks like here in Texas, in Central Texas right now is amazing.
Oh, yeah, well, I was thinking of that. I've been to San Antonio a few times, and when it's dry, it really looks dry.
Yeah, it does.
It has the same kind of rolling hills, that same kind of geographic conditions.
Yeah.
And probably the temperature is pretty much the same, even though we are in the spring here. I mean, essentially mid-spring here is very, very hot because it's so dry. During the day, it gets very hot. During the night, of course, the temperature drops because it's so dry. But the minimum temperature I saw there was 17 Celsius, which means 60-ish, 55 to 60 this time of the year. Probably in the summer when it's raining a lot, it's not going to be so cool. It's going to be warmer even during the night.
Yeah.
But I don't have interest in going there in the summer, so I'm probably not going. Anyway, then you start seeing this is a section. You see that that road here. On the back side of that road, that's where we are here. See, from the road, you can actually see that landscape, and you see some of the plants around.
Yeah.
And you see that the trees are pretty low, so the plants sometimes they grow on the ground because the light goes all the way to the ground because of very open vegetation. So the plants grow on all heights of the trees. So they're very easy to see, very easy to reach. See, I took this picture from Christine in 86. The trip we did, 86 or 87, because we did 2 trips at this time of the year. And you look at a place like this, it really looks like the African savannah. Everything is dead there.
Yeah.
You're just waiting to see the lions and the hyenas, but there is none there. See, because there is not much food, you don't have even jaguars, which is actually very good. Because I know in the habitat of the typical nobiliors there in the Pantanal, there are lots of jaguars. And also in the Amazon, there are lots of jaguars. It's always a little bit of a concern,
Yeah, for sure.
But here there is nothing. I just have to deal with the gnats and the butterflies and that kind of stuff. There's no, I never saw a snake there. And I don't remember seeing any spiders or scorpions, whatever. It's a very barren habitat in terms of animal life,
Yeah, it's amazing that epiphytes can grow out there.
Oh, they can.
Yeah.
See, this is more like a couple of pictures of nobilias in a little bit more protected spaces. You see, one thing you're going to see, look at this picture on the left. This plant is growing pretty close to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing you can notice there, look at the roots. There are lots of roots. And sometimes the roots go more than 20 feet on the trees. So you have to remember something. People sometimes have a problem growing nobiliar, not so much of growing nobiliars, but it make them bloom,
Yeah.
And I'll discuss a little bit about that, some suggestions. But you have to remember that the plants, 2 things. The plants can withstand that long dry period and then produce all this energy to flower at the end of the dry season. So the plants are extremely depleted. But they only can do that because they have a very extremely well-developed root system. Okay, because then they can absorb. Sometimes you don't even see the plants, you just see the roots, and then you follow the roots and you can find the plants. Because you notice on the picture on the right that the color of the plants is pretty much the same color as the bark. You don't see them much from the distance, unless, of course, they're in flower. Then it's easy to see. But again, you see lots of roots everywhere. And you also notice the second thing. Look at this plant here. Let me see if I can do something here. Look how dehydrated the plant is.
Yeah.
So the plant, even though the plant is well-rooted, and even holding a seed pod from last year. So the plant is under extreme stress and still survives because it's well adapted and it's extremely well rooted.
Yeah.
But the plant producing, coping with the drought, producing flowers, and also holding a seed pod, they can hold a seed pod for 13, 14 months. Because you see, they flower in September. If they produce the flowers get pollinated, they produce a seed pod. The seed pod is held throughout the rainy season and throughout the next dry season, which is the end of it now, which means that seed pod right now is about 12 months old. Okay, because it's from last year's flowering. And we need 1-2 months to get to the rainy season here now, which means that the seed pod is only going to open in the rainy season, which means a good 14 months after pollination. And that's another thing with Cattleya. If you want to do dry pod, don't do it like after 3-4 months, because the embryos are not going to be ready, because they need at least 6-8 months to get ready. Is it different from, for example, Cattleya intermedia or Cattleya leopoldi, that they can hold amethystoglossa, they hold seed pods for 4, 5, 6 months, which means in 3 months, the embryos are ready to sow. You can do green pod in 3 months, easy. But not nobiliar. This is probably the longest, together maybe with Cattleya digesi, they're probably the longest ones in terms of holding seed pods. Okay, so essentially.
And Francisco,
yes,
you had mentioned the leaves, but I really want everybody to see how wrinkled those leaves are. It's.
Oh yeah,
it's dry.
Yeah, the plants are very, see the first thing you're going to do when you see a plant like this, lots of water on the plant. If the plant is not well rooted and the shrinking of the leaves is because of not enough roots, if you throw a lot of water, you're going to rot the plant.
Yeah.
So that solves the problem of not seeing the flowers, because they're not going to have the plant either. So you have to be very careful in watering lobelias, just in the right time of the year.
And Francisco, can you talk a little bit about the fog that rolls in at night to maybe supplement a little bit? So it's probably not enough to keep.
Yes, that's essentially at the end of the dry season, we can get to dew point some nights, not every night. It's different, for example, from the habitat of Rupicolous lelius, that you can get to dew point almost every night. So at the end of the day, you get clouds and high humidity. But here is not true. You only can start getting to maybe get to dew point when you're getting close to the rainy season, because then you start getting the humid air coming. Okay. This time of the year, when it's completely dry like this, 5-6%, you're not going to get dew point. So you're not going to get any fog at night.
Oh, wow.
When you get fog at night, you know that the rainy season is coming, because the humid airs from Amazon and South Brazil are getting together and starting to feed into the region, which is going to happen just 2-3 months maximum. Okay,
Yeah.
but about 1 month before that, you start getting fog. It's very similar to what you get, for example, in the Sincorá Mountains when you get the Lelius sincorana. In the winter, it's very dry, but when you get to September, they flower October, November, the sincoranas. When you get to September, you go there, you start getting fog at night, because you start getting the humid air. It's not humid enough to produce rains yet, but it's starting to cool up a little bit and brings more moisture to the air. So it's not like you go from 5% humidity to 100% humidity on the rain. You start getting a progressive buildup of humidity. When you get to a critical point, then you start getting the rains. Okay.
Yeah. I would imagine that those early morning dew drops are probably pretty critical to pulling this thing through the dry period, huh?
Yeah, because it's in the end of the dry season. I mean, the plants are almost dead.
Yeah.
And they are just looking forward for a little bit of humidity, probably.
Huh.
And that's when the humidity comes. But you know something, and you see this with Rupicolous lelius too. Let's say, for example, the rains are supposed to come in end of September. If the rains don't come in September, they get late for any reason. They come 1 month, they are delayed like 1 month. You start having plants dying a lot, because the plants are on the limit. They are adapted to 8 months of drought, not to 9, not to 10, you know. So if the rain don't come, a lot of plants are going to die. And you see this in Rupicolous lelius. You look at some of these areas, you start seeing burnings, but it's not brush fires. It's just everything is burning out because of the heat. Because it's getting warmer, but it's still dry. See?
Yeah.
So the combination of the heat and the low air humidity, that's terrible for the plants. So they're really looking forward for the rain at the end of the dry season.
Huh.
Let me see if I can go back to the regular size. Okay, again, you see this picture shows very well the way the plants grow. You see, the plant is growing pretty close to the ground. Very nice, but those flowers are about 5 inches across. They're extremely showy and they're very fragrant too.
Yeah.
But look at the plants. The plants are very wrinkled too. So this is the norm of these plants. By the end of the dry season, I'm not going to find nice looking plants. The nicer looking plants are the ones that are not in flower. See, everything that is in flower is under a lot of stress.
It takes a lot of energy to make those flowers.
What's that, sorry?
It takes a lot of energy to make those flowers.
Exactly. And you see 3-4 flowers is normal in nature.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is more like a normal. Again, you see lots of roots everywhere.
Yep.
And the plants produce lots of flowers. And the other thing you'll notice that plants in the natural habitat are usually not looking pristine, not just because in that case because of the drought, but because of bugs too. See, you have lots of leaves that are eaten by bugs, because when you get to the habitat, the end of the dry season, there's no water. So all the bugs like grasshoppers, crickets, whatever, beetles, everything is trying to get water, and the only way they can get water is eating plants. Even though those plants are extremely tough to eat because the leaves of Cattleya beetles are very leathery,
Yeah.
but you still see that some of them are eaten because of the level of desperation the bugs are on, because really there's no rain, no water there.
I mean, that's a big bite taken out of that leaf in the middle
Oh
of
yeah, on that one here, yeah.
Yeah.
But there are some big grasshoppers there. Not as big as the lubbers we have here in Florida, but that's okay. But
Yeah.
at least the lubbers don't fly, which is the good thing, because if we had an infestation of flying, like locusts and that kind of stuff, Florida will be gone pretty quickly. Luckily, we don't. But anyway, this is the kind of place you're expecting to find plants. You're not going to find like Cattleya intermediate in South Brazil that you can look anywhere. You see like hundreds of plants in flower at the same time. You see one here, one there. The maximum I saw in one tree was like 10 plants in one big tree. And again, you see the natural habitat. We always try to keep the natural habitat in the condition we see it, but the habitats are very dynamic. See, trees grow up, trees die, and plants die, and plants produce seeds, and they germinate anywhere. So you look at the tree like that on the left. The tree's dead. The bark is shedding, which means see there is a plant here hanging for dear life by one root here. We actually got this plant and put in a fork on another tree to see if we could save it. That was 40 years ago, whatever. But you see the one on the top here is going to die because that bark is going to shed and the plant is going to fall off, and
yeah,
that's it. I mean, this is the way life is in some of these dry areas. I mean, it's the same thing with the cataseedums we mentioned before. See, as the palm trees grow, you see the lower leaves start falling.
Yep.
And then the cataseedums can't have a footing anymore. They start falling off. And this is why cataseedums, for example, have the reputation of being short-lived. Because in nature, usually they don't last long because the trees, usually the conditions are not perfect for a long-lived cataseedum, except for some of the big ones that live in tabebuia trees. It didn't show, but the tabebuia trees can be hundreds of years old, even 1,000 years old. So the plants can produce monster clumps of cataseedums there because, I mean, the tree's going to be there for the long haul.
That's pretty amazing. So these nobilior clumps are usually kind of small then, huh?
Yeah, this one on the top here is not that small, but see, there's some part of it is already dead here, and the end of it is going to die. There are some big ones, but because it's so dry, you don't have big clumps like you have, for example, in Cattleya walkeriana. I'm going to show a picture of walkeriana later on, just to give an idea of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an interesting picture because I always thought that the Cattleya nobiliors, they grew on pink tabebuia trees because there are lots of tabebuia trees in this region. But because in 2009 we went a little bit earlier, the tabebuias were still all in flower. And we found out that actually the nobiliors grow on white tabebuias that are here all in flower. They're just beautiful trees. And I mean, they just cover everything, and then the beetles are just there. And yeah, that's essentially a good idea that I can give you on Cattleya nobilior. But there is something else here that I left open that we can. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and just because I'm just going to change the program here, which is the pictures I have from 2009. Because I have other landscapes here to give an idea of how these things go.
And Francisco, while you're pulling that up, can you tell us a little bit? I mean, now these amaliae are adapted for these extreme conditions, but they don't actually need that in cultivation, right?
Oh yeah, that's the next thing I was going to talk about.
Okay.
Okay, can you see that? That's a landscape picture.
Yeah, tabebuia blooming.
Yeah, the white tabebuia are blooming. This I took from the roadside. This is a large set of vegetation. Usually the trees are not that big. But the interesting thing I found out later on, and I didn't see at the time, is that look at this point here. You can see my cursor?
Yeah.
Okay, look at this point here. There is a plant of Cattleya nobilior there.
Oh,
I took the picture, didn't see any nobiliors there, but there is one here. You
interesting.
barely can see it, but it is there. It's a pink, clump of flowers here, just in the middle of the vegetation. That was the day I found out that telephoto lens is really good to be able to get this detail here, because geez. You see, look at it from the, and this is an 8 megapixel camera that I had at the time. Now we have high resolution cameras. But the interesting thing is that sometimes you look at areas like this. You see with the pink tabebuyas?
Mm-hmm.
See, pink tabebuyas rocks is drier than dry there. So in this place here, there were no nobiliars. It's just too dry. You do have a vulture here, though. And that was the only thing alive here beside the tree was that vulture. I went to the top here, looked at all this, and couldn't see any nobiliars.
Huh.
But let me show you something here that is interesting, because this is what we see with the other species too. It's not just the Cattleya nobilior. So for the fuscopetalons here, okay. That's actually a little bit of a better picture here. You see, they flower at the same time as the nobiliars, fuscopetalon and macropetalon. You look at the plants here, it's a little bit closer. You see the plants look like dead.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few yellow leaves, and when the rains come, they're going to be nice and green again. The orchids are going to rehydrate and look great until the next dry season. They're just going to be holding seed pods. What I'm going to show you is that big tree that I told you to have 10 Cattleya nobiliars.
Yeah.
See that tree. Looking from that distance, you don't see much, but look at that when I do a 100% crop here. Look here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 10th is somewhere here.
Oh wow! I hope that tree
that's
is
a very
there.
tall tree. That tree is almost like 80 feet tall.
Yeah. Oh wow!
There's no way you can get close to the plants, but you see how many plants are here. But everything just looks like dead. I mean, if the nobiliars were not in flower, you'll have a hard time finding them. Although there are some of them here that are without flowers. But the moment you see the ones in flower, then you can try to look for the others. Okay, now we can.
No,
Yeah, go ahead.
Francisco, I was going to say, I assume that the ones in the 80-foot trees are a little safer from collection than the ones close to the ground, huh?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I know that people are still collecting those plants these days, but today maybe not so much, but I'd say like 10, 20 years ago, people were then just collecting everything. Yeah. Because today people try to get to the higher quality ones that are all produced from seeds. So there are a few people, collectors, but not that many. In the past, everybody wanted to go there and collect everything they can to try to get the good ones, different varieties and that kind of stuff. Today, that's not happening with nobiliars, and maybe not with walkerianas to an extent, not anymore. But for example, what people are doing in Brazil now, Sophronitis brevipedunculata, for example, because they have the yellow ones, the pinks, all the different colors, people are collecting truckloads of them, depleting the habitats like as we speak, and flowering everything just to get the varieties and throw away all the rest. So this is just disgusting. I would say 40 years ago, you could understand that because people are not concerned about, the limits of habitats. But today it's kind of absurd, I think, what people are doing.
Huh.
And you go to some of the nurseries there, they have like a wall of hanging plants, like hundreds, maybe even thousands of brevipedunculatas. And just waiting for them to flower to get a yellow one. If you don't find the yellow one, they throw everything away. Maybe get another one, hold one with a better shape a little bit, and that's it. The rest goes to trash.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, pretty ridiculous, yeah.
And Francisco, we have about 7 minutes left.
Okay, so we talk about the cultivation a bit.
Yeah, that'd be great.
In cultivation, we cannot have 5-6% humidity. That's a fact. Forget about it. So I found out by accident here in Florida, because one year I didn't hit the greenhouses. From November, it was a long winter. From November to February, temperatures were pretty close to 35 to 40 a few nights before that. And I tried to keep the plants completely dry, no water in them to keep them alive, because I was afraid of rotting. And I found out that actually that stress with the cold, a few weeks of cold stress replaced the stress of many months of low humidity. So the plants got in shock and they flower. And I had nobilius flower with 6 flowers on a spike, something I never saw in nature. So all my nobilius flowers, and I found out, wow, so maybe that's the solution. Give them some temperature stress instead of drought. The problem is sometimes they take the plants inside during the winter and they keep them at very comfortable temperatures.
Yeah.
We can keep them dry, but they're kept comfortable. So what happens is that instead of the plant flowering, they keep growing. So the problem most people have with nobilius is making them flower, not making them grow. You have to remember the growth cycle. We didn't have time to discuss the growth cycle. But see, in the rainy season, they produce a very fast growing growth with the pseudobulb and 2 leaves on top. Then they rest for months and months and months until the end of the dry season, 8, 9 months. Then they produce a new growth, which is just a flower spike. And nobilius always do that. Not like walkeriana, sometimes they fall from a bulb that make a growth that makes a bulb. Nobilius never do that. So what happens is that if you keep watering the plants, instead of producing flower, they produce another growth.
Yeah.
And another one behind. So the plant gets a nice bushy plant and no flowers. So you have to find a way to keep them get them stressed.
And I do want to point out that here in Texas, I do get 2 or 3 separate flushes of growth from spring, and then they'll finish. They grow and they create the bulbs pretty quick, and then you keep watering, they keep growing, and it's
they grow very fast. Actually, the plants are bought from Brazil in the last ship, and they all produce new growth now, which is not supposed to happen if they were in Brazil, but they did because it's humid here, so they grew and they are all looking nice.
Huh.
But I just want to go very quickly to show walkerianas the size walkeriana clumps can go. Got it?
Yeah.
So that's walkeriana. That's walkeriana.
On that tree, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. That's more. Look at that. And one thing I told you, unfortunately, that picture, that place, I was there 3 years ago, and a friend of mine just told me that all these plants have been ripped off this place. They're collected clean, so all these plants are gone.
That's too bad.
It's just too bad, really. See, that's again flowering season. Plants a little bit under stress. You see. See, all this has been collected clean, which is a shame, really.
That is.
That was an old tree I took a long time ago, 85.
In a swamp too.
Yeah, there was a swamp, correct, yeah, on the roadside. But that tree was 100 feet tall, so I couldn't even do anything about the plants.
Oh, wow.
And this is on the presentation, this is a subject for another time, the differences between the 2 species. That's going to be a next one.
For sure.
So I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, there's a lot of things to talk about those plants, and
yeah,
maybe we can do this again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, Francisco. I really appreciate you showing us these amazing pictures and telling us about the habitat of amaliae. And we have about 2 minutes left, and you had mentioned a trip before. Can you, in about a minute and a half, talk about your trips?
Yeah, essentially, we take people to see the plants in the natural habitat. Because of COVID, we stopped, like everybody stopped traveling. But now I'm just double checking all the habitats. And from next year on, well, we have our trip that we're doing.
Yeah. The
2 of us and Chris and maybe other people, I don't know. But after that, I'm going to resume the regular trips, like just to see the plants in natural habitat, Rupiculus lelias, everywhere. And each time of the year, we have stuff in flower.
Yeah.
Really nice landscape, nice way to see the plants.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to be able to go, hopefully next year.
Yeah, trust me, seeing the slides is one thing, but seeing the plants live in 3D is a different thing.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'll have to give you a call here and we'll chat about this in more detail for sure.
Yeah, I was talking with Chris. We're thinking about taking drones there too, so we have a new dimension of photograph and filming on these areas.
Oh, that'd be
It's
super
just-
cool.
Looks exciting.
And
But
what's
thanks
the
again.
best
I hope
month? What's
yeah.
the best month to go for amaliae? Bloom?
Oh, this time of the year, September. September is ideal.
September. Okay,
Yeah, September.
cool.
And you see lots of ridiculous lettuce too. There's Jungiana, granulosa, there's everything flowering in September. So that's the good time to go.
That's great. Well, again, Francisco, thank you. It was good to chat.
Well,
And,
pleasure. I hope your audience enjoys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You have a good one.
You too.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.